Hey folks, Dust here, and it's time to talk about this huge patch that we had to CSGO right here in November of 2019. It's one of the largest patches we've had in quite some time. Most of the other changes we've had have been like little map changes or little things like that, at least for the last several months. So it's definitely been a while since we had a beefy update to talk about, and this one's extra beefy because it's one of our first operations in a very long time. So on the content side of things, there was a lot done that we haven't seen again in quite some time since last operation, which I can't even remember how long ago that was. It was so long ago. So we'll start with the operation a bit, then we'll talk about obviously the really important gameplay changes like the change to the Krieg as well as the Famas and Galil and some other stuff, right? So let's just get into it. So first of all, for me, this update has its pros and its cons, as most updates do. I think on the content side of things, there's really nothing to complain about other than the custom character models, which we'll talk a little bit about. But when it comes to the gameplay side of things, that's where, you really start to have some issues, I think. But we'll start with the operation side of things. So the Shattered Wet operation brings us a Battle Pass type system. It brings a bunch of new weapon collections. It brings a new case. It brings some new knives. It brings obviously a bunch of different skins because of the weapon collections in the case, and stickers and graffiti and all that good stuff. Weekly missions. The whole idea of a battle pass, of course, we've seen this already in a lot of battle royale games. It's very popular, like in Apex Legends and Fortnite and all that good stuff. So you get a lot of that in this update, basically. Also some changes to Danger Zone, an additional map, the jungle map. So basically a lot of content when it comes to skins, whether it be the custom character models or the weapon skins, a battle pass, missions, new maps, all the stuff, right? So on that end, this is great for the health of the game. This can help the casual audience. It can maybe help attract people to play the game more from the casual audience. It even gives people who are super competitive something to do for fun, aside from scrimming and playing matchmaking, all those different things, right? So there really is just nothing to complain about when it comes to the content side of this. I have to applaud Valve for this because while it's taken way too fucking long for something like this to happen, at least they finally did, right? And then they did also this in the match accolades and just a couple of cool like UI things like that as well. So again, I really have nothing to complain about. I feel like the Shattered Weapon case is actually pretty sick. Pretty much all the skins in there look really good. Again, all these different collections and knives and everything. Again, I think it's great to see this content injected to the game. I think all of it really looks really cool. And I've even had some fun playing some of it, right? So awesome stuff on that end. The one problem we do have, though, is these custom agents, with the different like FBI stuff and Saber stuff and, all these different character models for CTs and T side. Look, I think custom models is great for a casual audience and casual game modes, but when it comes to the competitive environment, it's a real problem. For one, they might be harder to see on certain maps, so it's a visibility issue, not just for maps, but maybe for people who have color blindness, as like Elige was really talking about on social media. But also, you can maybe tell who a certain player is based on their character model. So if you know that someone's kind of a lurker for a team and you see that they're using a certain character model, and then you see that character model, then you can kind of identify that, this is the lurker, so they're probably hitting the other side of the map. You get what I'm saying? Like, there could be some little issues like that. Obviously, teams can get around this by making their entire team use the same character model or something like that. But it shouldn't even really be a possibility. And obviously, there's solutions to this, right? You don't allow custom character models in the competitive environment. At least, leagues can make the decision to force like certain character models or something like that if it comes down to it. Maybe matchmaking is still going to allow it. I'm not really sure. Or you could just simply create a command, as Leech's talking about, like the CL_min model, where you can kind of choose what models everyone looks like to you. It's a client side thing. That way you don't have any issues with visibility or anything like that. But look, I just think custom models don't work, unfortunately, for this game. I think like custom gloves and stuff like that could be an additional thing that they could create, which they already have. But the idea of having custom models and custom clothes, again, I think it can work in like Danger Zone and casual mode. But when it comes to like matchmaking and when it comes to actual, the esports side of things, I just think it causes a lot more problems than it's worth when it comes to like the benefits of having like cool looking stuff. Like I just think the cons outweigh the pros of these custom character models. Again, maybe there are ways around it with certain like commands that are only used in the professional environment for esports. But again, I think it's a neat idea. Again, I like the idea of having, additional content and customizability. But to me, this just feels like it's not going to work, unfortunately. So on to the gameplay side. We're going to start with the Krieg, which was somewhat nerfed with a price of $3,000. Now, unfortunately, to me, this just isn't enough. I think that the gun's still going to run pretty rampant in gun rounds, and I think that the only thing that this is potentially solved is the idea that now people should not really be able to buy the SG if they get a bomb plant in the first round and lose and they try to, force up round 2. They shouldn't be able to get like 2 to 3 SGs like we have been seeing in the professional scene for several months now, which has really been killing the game, really kind of just bastardizing the economy system and really making it kind of ridiculous that CTs find themselves in the back foot after securing the pistol round victory just because they allowed a bomb plant, which sometimes you kind of have to do to play safe because you have to play retake setup sometimes depending on the map, and it's a big mess. So this change at least solves the idea of SGs not being bought on the second round. But that's really about it. I think the gun's still going to run rampant. I don't think it was enough of a price increase to deter people from buying it. I think it's still superior to the AK in every way, even if the price is a little bit more expensive. And I really feel that you're still going to see a lot of 3 to 5 players buying the SG per round. Maybe a couple of people if they prefer the AK. Maybe personal preference somehow, some way you would still buy the AK. But most people are still going to buy the Krieg when you have economy. It's not really going to move it the way you want to. In my opinion, the way that the Krieg would be best is if it was like a specialist weapon, like an actual role on a team, like an Opper, like an SGer, or a Krieger, whatever you want to call it. I think it would make sense if you got it to a point where maybe only 1 or 2 people would actually buy the gun. So you'd have like 1 Op, 2 to 3 AKs, and then 1 to 2 Kriegs. Like, I think that would be a great place to have it if you want to make sure it has a permanent role in the game. You don't want to phase it out entirely like we have done with some other weapons. The way that you do that is either A, you will increase the price even more to where maybe the Krieger is going to have less utility, and then the AK guys are going to have more utility, and so that's how you offset it. So it means that your total utility for the team is going to be a little bit lower in order to get the specialist weapon in the hands of like a role player on your team that uses the weapon. So a bigger price increase could do that. Maybe bumping it up to say $3,200, $3,300. All of a sudden, I think that makes it substantially more money than the AK. It definitely makes a difference at that point. Maybe even a little bit more than that. Maybe closer to $3,400. I'm not sure, but I just think that only increasing it the slight amount that they did doesn't really impact how much it's going to be bought. It only impacts second round situations where you have a bomb plant. That's it. The other things that you can do are what some of the people have already suggested, which is like Twist suggested making it a semi-automatic weapon. So that way, yeah, you can rapid tap it, but it's not going to be a full auto weapon. That's one way to do it. I think Maui Snake came up with the idea of just making it where you have slower movement speed. It already is a bit slower than the AK, but it's pretty much negligible. You can't really feel the difference that much between the movement speed of the Krieg and the AK as it currently stands. So I think there needs to be a more drastic difference between the movement speed values of the Krieg and the AK. So that's one route you could go. You could do some combination of both. I'm not really sure. But something to make it more of a specialist weapon. Whether you want to choose price, whether you want to choose movement speed, whether you want to choose that it's semi-automatic, which would be really drastic. Don't get me wrong, that is definitely kind of a thing you'd have to really experiment with. Or whether you want to change the fire rate like they did with the AUG. Something else has to give here. And here's my biggest problem. Is I'm fine with them doing this for now if we were somehow ensured that they would be willing to make further changes to the gun in a timely fashion. Because that's really the biggest fucking problem that I have with Valve and what their philosophy has been really for years at this point, is they let broken-ass guns run rampant for months on end before they finally make a slight adjustment to it, and then even then it's not enough, and they keep doing these stupid small incremental changes, which is fine to do small incremental changes to get data and make sure you don't over nerf or over bust something, but that doesn't mean that you have to leave it running rampant for motherfucking 9 months. Or some crazy shit like that, which has happened in the past. The CZ, when that gun came out, and it was a full auto pistol that reloaded just fine as far as reload speed goes and all that good shit, and only costed like $300 or something like that, or $500, somewhere in that range. I can't remember what the original price was. And then all they did to nerf it, after it had already run rampant for a few months, was bump the price by like $200 to $300 fucking dollars. And then people were still buying the shit out of it. It was still fucking OP as fuck, and they literally kept it that way for months and months and months. The Tech 9 basically happened just after the CZ. When they finally got the CZ where it needed to be, the fucking Tech 9 was broken as shit. And that led for months and months and months. To where if you combine the two, between the CZ and the Tech 9, that shit was running rampant in the game for like over a year before it ever finally got fully addressed to where it needed to be, to where it had its place in the game. It's a good place right now. I think the CZ is in a good place right now. I don't know about the Tech 9. Most people don't use it. Maybe you could say it's been over-nerfed to some degree, so it doesn't really get much use. But the CZ, I think, is like a cool specialist situation right now in certain, like, force buy situations or holding certain angles. I think it's in a great place right now. But it took so long to do it because Valve sat on their hands with collecting data, whatever the fuck they were doing, and it just took way too long to get anywhere. And I feel like that's exactly what's happened with this Krieg. It has run rampant for months at this point. You have made a very, very small nerf that only really solves one small problem, the second round situation, and it doesn't really change how the Krieg is going to be used, I think, throughout the majority of a half of play. So why is this the case? Like, I don't get why they pussyfoot around with these nerfs and buffs to weapons. Again, you don't need to make a drastic change off the top, but you need to be committed to making changes on a more regular basis. I'm not saying you need to like jump the gun and change it a week later, unless it's like incredibly broken to the point to where it's just like so obvious that it's broken, like we actually saw with the R8 revolver, or like when we had like the laser beam AUG and shit like that. Like they updated those pretty quick, if I remember correctly. I don't have the best memory, but I feel like it didn't run rampant for too long. But this Krieg situation, the CZ and Tech 9 of the past, these situations have plagued us for far too long. And I don't want to see that happen again. Like, I'm sick of the competitive integrity of our game on the esports side of things being jeopardized to cater to casuals. I get you need to cater to casuals to build your player base, and that's important. You need a lot of players. That means eyeballs on the game. That is an important thing. That's people spending money on the game to get further revenue to further develop the game and develop future titles for Valve and maybe support esports or whatever the case may be. I get all of those things. But there needs to be, I feel like it's swayed too much towards the casual side at this point when it comes to weapon balance. There needs to be a better middle ground for us. That, are you start, doing things differently for esports compared to casual game modes. I don't want to do that. Everyone wants to play the same game, but something needs to happen here because I'm sick of the competitive integrity being affected by shit like this. It just doesn't need to happen. Like, let's get this gun to a place where it needs to be, and I feel like you have to know that this small price nerf is not going to cut it. That in our economy system right now is so busted. Like, the fact that we have been for a long time now in an economy system where you're punished for having a big lead if you win all the rounds close. So if you win 7 rounds in a row, but every round came down to a 2v2 or something like that, so you had to rebuy like 3 to 4 weapons every single time and replenish utility, and so that means every time you're buying down to, like just under $2,000 or maybe a little bit more than that, and then all of a sudden you lose one round, and guess what? That's a $1,400 loss bonus, and so you're fucked. You can't buy the next round. Meanwhile, the other team that's been losing 7 rounds in a row, they win that round, and then they have plenty of money because they've been on max loss bonus, plus they won the round, so they have that money coming in now. And the moment that they lose another round, that's okay. They're still on max loss bonus for at least a couple of more rounds before they finally drop down to like 2,900 and below, but that takes several rounds to get there. And so essentially, they can just buy for fucking ever. Meanwhile, the other team that had a big lead is now like on a buy-save rotation because of how the economy system works. Now, I don't know what the exact solution to that could be, but something needs to happen because this, to me, makes it to where there's too strong of a comeback mechanic. I get you want games to be close, and I get you want as many buy rounds as possible, but at that point, why don't we just redo the whole economy system again and just do like start money 16K? If you really want to go that direction, just go for it. But if not, then let's get to a point where we get appropriate economy system for the longevity of the game, whether that be making the initial loss bonus always $1,900, whether that be adjusting the values altogether for loss bonus, whatever the case may be. Something has to give because right now I think the comeback mechanic is too strong. Now let's get to the Famas and the Galil. So the Famas and the Galil had a price buff of $200 to where now the Famas is $2,050 and the Galil is $1,800, and they also improved the full auto spraying accuracy of the guns. Look, I'm totally fine with making these guns a bit more viable because right now the Galil basically never gets used in the professional scene, and the Famas is, it gets used, but it's obviously not used nearly as much as the M4, which it should never be, in my opinion. I would have been fine with them improving the full auto accuracy, but I feel like they should have just stayed the same price because I feel like now what we're going to run into is situations where everyone's buying Galil's round 2. So you remember the whole problem we had where people get a first round bomb plant, but they lose the round, and then they can buy 2 to 3 SGs. Well, maybe that's not going to happen anymore, but now you're going to see like 4 to 5 Galils in armor against a team with like SMGs and Famas, which is kind of an even fight. It's better than the 2 to 3 SGs, but to me, it just seems like we're kind of jumping the gun on how quickly people are buying rifles in a game. And I also think that you kind of overbuff these. Like, I think you could have either kept their accuracy the same, but buff the price, or you could have kept the price the same and buffed the accuracy. I don't think you needed both. I think you should just do one. Now, hopefully in due time, they'll kind of realize this. It seems like they have a track record of price buffing a gun to get people to realize how good it is, and then they bring the price back up, which is what they've done a couple of times. And I'm kind of fine if they do that, but I just don't want it to take too long. I don't know how bad this is going to be, but I just fear like we're going to see like buys every single round. Which, again, if you're trying to do that, just go ahead and change the economy system. in my opinion, if that's what you want. Let's just do it. Let's just get rid of pistol rounds. Let's just have max money to start. Let's get all the gun rounds. I mean, I don't know. Like, it just seems like it's like they're playing in this weird gray area where they're kind of making the economy system be really odd instead of just like making a decision on how they want the game to be. So that's kind of where I'm at. I actually like the idea of making the guns better as far as feeling better to use, but I just think the price didn't need to be buffed. This isn't nearly as bad as the situation with the Krieg, in my opinion. We have to see how it plays out. I can just tell you from a glance and from what I've heard from scrims that the Krieg definitely has not been addressed well enough. And as far as Famas and Galil goes, I'm not really sure. The last thing to talk about really is the fact that cash got added to the competitive matchmaking pool, which means it seems to be on its way in. I'll probably make a separate video about cash and about what map should come out for cash and all that good stuff. I think that's like maybe a piece of content I can do if you folks are interested. But I'm not really going to touch cash and everything here. When it comes to Vertigo, I like most of the changes here. I think they did improve the A-bomb site a bit, but I do think that retaking A is still a bit difficult because there still really is only kind of one route into the site. So I think it really hasn't addressed retake A problems for CTs. But I guess you can challenge ramp a little bit better because it's a little bit wider. And so there's a couple of different things that have cleaned up and made the A site more smooth. But I do think we could still maybe just reopen up elevator room. That way you could maybe even have like a long range fight between that new hallway and into elevator room. Like have like a long range fight there. Ts could smoke it off to execute the site. CTs could use that route as an initial way to retake A. I think that maybe you shouldn't have it as wide as it used to be, but I feel like there could be some type of way to connect those two areas back. Maybe not wide open, maybe some kind of squeaky doorway type situation or some type of vent or a window you can jump through. I don't know, but I just feel like if you open that area back up again, I feel like it would make for a lot better play at the A-bomb site for both sides for retaking, and again, you could still smoke it off when you're executing. So yeah, that's kind of one change I like to see. I still feel like Vertigo's in a weird place where I'm not really liking it. It's kind of fun to watch and cast because it's different, it's fast paced, but I know it's still a nightmare for people to observe when it comes to production. And I still feel like it just doesn't feel like Counter-Strike in a way, even though it is like kind of fun because it's new and different. So yeah, I just think that there still needs to be some changes to this map, but I'm fine with the changes that they did make. And that pretty much does it for me. I think the biggest thing when it comes to the competitive side were these weapon changes, which I've already talked through a lot, so I'm not going to keep doing it. If you folks enjoyed this video, please follow, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you next time.